25,000 new cases of Alzheimer's are diagnosed every year in this country. Doctors and researchers on the front lines are doing everything to reverse this alarming stat, including a new test now being used here in Toronto. I spoke with Dr. Sharon Cohen, medical director of the Toronto Memory Program, about potential breakthroughs in treatments.
We are now at the stage where we have prevention studies for Alzheimer's disease, and this is pretty new. Up until a few years ago, it was really a burden carried by people who were already rather frail and affected by the disease, going into clinical trials, hoping to get symptom improvement. But now, with our understanding that changes in the brain happen decades before symptoms, we have a window of opportunity to enroll people in prevention studies. And what does that mean for Alzheimer's disease? It means if you are in a higher risk category by virtue of genetic risk factors, you can go into a prevention study. If you have amyloid plaque accumulating in your brain, you can go into a prevention study. And again, this is very exciting because here we're not trying to play catch up with an injured brain. We're trying to keep healthy people healthy.
Now, do you still need any patients, or you have the patients for the study?
Recruitment for the studies are ongoing, and the faster we can recruit, the sooner we will get an answer as to whether these amyloid-lowering approaches will change the face of Alzheimer's and prevent people from getting the symptoms of the disease.
If someone is listening, they think that they might have an issue or a loved one does, take us through what it is that you're going to expect for the study. What do they have to go through for this study?
So we know people who are getting into their late 50s, early 60s and beyond often have mild forgetfulness. And the question arises, is this just normal for age, or is this the beginning of something more sinister? That can be hard to figure out. And people who have a loved one, a family member, it could be a parent, could be a sibling, who has been affected by Alzheimer's disease, often put themselves under a microscope and are more sensitized to the possibility that mild forgetfulness may represent something more. One of the first steps that we may decide to do is a cheek swab. And here we're going to measure within an hour or so whether they carry a risk factor gene for Alzheimer's disease. And that's an ApoE gene that comes as ApoE4 in the risk version, the high-risk version. And if you have one copy of ApoE4, you have 3 times higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. If you have 2 copies of ApoE4, you have 10 times higher risk. You may still never develop Alzheimer's, but you're sure in a high-risk category, and it makes sense if there are prevention studies to try the interventions on people in this higher risk group. So we get an ApoE result. That allows people to join a study geared at lowering amyloid plaque in people who are at high risk. That would be one route. Another study considers the risk factor, the major risk factor, to be age over 60 and having amyloid protein accumulating in the brain. So a PET scan would actually be the way we would be able to tell whether amyloid plaque is building up. These studies are studies to ultimately give people at risk an amyloid-reducing agent, either a drug that blocks production of amyloid, and we can block it by about 80%, so very dramatically turn off the brain's production of amyloid. And we can also draw amyloid out of the brain by promoting antibodies that tackle amyloid.
How long might participants be part of the either study, whether it's the swab or the scan?
Right. So 4.5 to 5 years would be the ballpark. Trials may get shorter. Prevention studies may get shorter as we validate lowering of amyloid as a outcome measure. Right now we have to go by cognitive testing, but if we are able over the next couple of years, to show that lowering amyloid predicts better outcome for people, then we might be able to move endpoints such that you see a scan is going in the right direction, and that might be enough to lead to approval of a prevention study. Very exciting.
It is. And so you still have to get approval, and that's still years away before this can become more commonplace.
That's right. Once these studies are completed, if they show the results that we hope, that people who are at risk don't progress to Alzheimer's disease, then there will be a huge desire to get these drugs approved on the market and available, because so many of us are at risk. We're living longer. People are living into their 80s, 90s. Lots of people are turning 100. We don't want people to develop Alzheimer's disease. But people who are at risk now may well want to get a head start and not wait, several years until we get results, but do something now. And they will hopefully do something for themselves, but also move the end of the studies forward so that everybody can have access.
And I guess you've got the hope that one day there's going to be positive results that will lead to these preventative steps being out on the market.
We are very hopeful. When you look at other areas of medicine, prevention is so key. We don't wait till people have heart attacks. We treat high blood pressure. We treat high cholesterol. It's not any different in Alzheimer's disease. We just haven't had enough of the scientific underpinnings to detect amyloid or to do these cheek swabs and get rapid ApoE results. And now we're better positioned to tackle Alzheimer's from a prevention standpoint. So I always say to my staff and when I speak at community events, it's not a matter of if, it's really when. And people participating in studies can help move this along faster.
Well, fingers crossed the day comes sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, for all of our sakes.
Dr. Cohen, thank you.
My pleasure.
That was Dr. Sharon Cohen, Medical Director of the Toronto Memory Program. And for more information, you can go online to torontomemoryprogram.com.